How's it going, everyone? I hope you're having a fantastic day. It's been a while, but in today's video I'm doing Progressive House from start to finish part 5. It's been a while, I apologise, but I just wanted to get out some other content. In the previous episode, if I remember, we worked on some effects. We added a few risers in the build-up, and then we started with the kick drum and the drop bass. So in today's episode, we're going to be working on the drop a bit more. We're going to be adding some drop effects, some white noise, some extra effects, and I'm going to be starting the drop chords. So it's going to be a pretty good episode, so I hope you enjoy it. And let's get straight into it. So as it's been quite a while since the previous part, I'm going to play through the entire of the track just to refresh everyone's and myself's memory, since I've kind of forgot what it sounds like. So we're going to do that and then we continue on with the parts. I hope you enjoy, and let's see what this sounds like. So that is what we have so far. If I remember in the previous episode, we said we was going to do some more mixing on the bass onto the bass bus. We only have a sidechain on there, so we're going to do some bass processing, and then we're going to move on to some drop effects so we can feel the mix out a bit more, so I can understand what it's going to sound like. Effects is a very integral part of the drop, and then we can move on to the drop chords, and then we'll see how it sounds from there. So we're going to start with a Fab Filter Saturn. There's a preset on there called Subtle Saturation or something. Yeah, it's Gentle Saturator. So that boosts some of the harmonic layers just to push the bass out of your speakers a bit more, give it a bit more grit. And then I'm going to add a Noveltech character. I'm going to leave it on mode 1 since this is the bass. I'm going to boost around just below the 50 target mark. And then something I like to do with my bass is I like to cut off some high frequencies just to give a bit more room for the chords and the leads and the effects. Around 14 to 12 kilohertz, no more than that. And then I'm going to do a very, very subtle low cut, just to make sure we remove any rumble from these two plugins we've just added. And then going to add another EQ to do a dip in the 5000 Hertz range. Right there. I'm also dipping the 2500 Hertz range as well. Next, I'm going to add a Pro QC. I'm going to add a bass preset called Upright Bass Gentle. There's no peaks coming out of individual basses now. They're all squished together and sounds very, very tight. And then finally, I'm going to add one final EQ to do one more high cut. There you go, that's perfect. So if I turn it on and off, you will hear there's just some very, very high frequencies that just get cut off. So that is the bass. Now we've got to mix the volumes a bit more since we've done some compression and some saturation. We've got to mix it in with the kick a bit more. So one tip I like to do is add an LFO to my master, turn on this thing like I showed you in the previous episode, and it shows the waveform, and I can get a perfect understanding of the waveform with the kick and the bass together. We need to increase the sidechain a bit more just to make it a little more tight, since this is the sidechain on its own. going to turn up this mix to 100% just to make it a little more tighter. We may have to bounce these bass layers out. We'll leave it for now because we're going to move on to the effects. Going to duplicate this over to another 8 bars. So to start with, we're going to add a wonderful sample I love to use in my progressive house tracks. And it sounds like this. So that's a wonderful sounding effect that I love to use in my progressive house tracks. So we may have to stretch this sample since we're on 126 and not 128. Quite simple. All you got to do is click this little waveform here, click fit to tempo, type in BPM and just type in 128. Bear in mind, this is all trial and error at the moment. Once you add the leads and the chords and all the other extra drums, you'll need to go through and do some minute changes to the volumes because they may be too loud, they may be too quiet. That's just going through and polishing your sounds, also known as a mix down. Next, I'm going to add this very basic crash loop. It's just a crash hitting on every single beat. So now the big part comes in with all the impacts and all the white noise. So what I like to use is the Charlie Den's Stellar Pack. And one effect I love to use in progressive house is something called a down sign. This just adds a wonderful amount of energy to the track. And as you can hear already, just these 3 effects alone makes the drop sound a lot more full. So the first white noise I'm going to use is from one of Ollie James' Patreon packs. And it also, as you can see, he does it for you. He shuts it off at the last section, so you haven't got to worry about that. And the one I've used from Cashmere is called a Cashmere Exhaust Crowd. So it's a mixture of white noise and a crowd, which also helps. So it's sounding very, very nice. So we're going to add all these into the mixer. So far it's sounding very, very good. So one thing I'd like to add now, after listening back at the start of the video, this section here, I want to add a nice reverb snap. So we're going to go into Cashmere here. I'm going to go into drums and then snaps. So we're going to use this one here. Since it's a dry sample, we need to add our own reverb, which is perfectly fine. I'm going to add it into the mixer and add a simple reverb toe onto it. Clean verb, low cut, no pre-delay. The snap just helps with a bit more rhythm in the track, and with the reverb adds a bit more emotion. So it's quite helpful in the track. Then we can move straight into the build up, and then now we're back at the drop. Now to end this episode, I'm going to work on the drop chords. Drop chords are more simple than you realise, since they're just there to fill up the bass a bit more, fill up the frequencies a bit more, and add a bit more support and emotion to the drop leads. We're going to keep it quite simple with 2 or 3 layers and some simple processing, and then we can end the video. So I actually went on and made the chords off recording just so I could speed up the process and not make the video drag out. But I'm going to go through every single preset and show you the process and go in as much detail just to help you out as much as I can. So for the chords, we have 3 layers. We have first one is from Stellar Silent. Charlie Den's, like I said before, is Silent 1 Soundbank. Second one is also from Stellar. This is Volume 1. And then the third one is a Nexus piano called Dance Piano. This is a very, very nice piano. This is a very, very important layer. You'll see why in a second. So I'm going to play you what they sound like quickly. One thing I'd like to point out is these ones are playing the rhythm of the main melody. So if I go to the main melody here. Just a simple EQ cutting out the lows on its insert and then it links through a bus. Next is chord 2. And right away you can hear these are held at sustain chords. Same thing here with just an EQ, taking off some high frequencies a bit here and some low. And also this layer has bass notes added, just add a bit more body to the chords, fill up the frequency spectrum a bit more. And then the third layer is the Nexus piano. This is a very, very important layer. This is not linked to the chord bus. This is processed on its own with a simple OTT, EQ taken at the 5000 Hz range, simple sound goodizer on letter A, kickstart, which is the same as the chords. The signal's quite panned to the right automatically. I did some panning to the left to compensate that. So overall they all sound like this. So straight away you can hear they're quite powerful. If I turn chords 2 off, it's very, very weak, because the sustain chords help the power continue throughout. But again, if I turn off the piano, you miss that extra high end crunch, and again with the chords 1. So they're all very, very important, and they all layer together very nicely. Now if I show you the mix bus, very, very simple process chain. It's an OTT again. OTT is an incredible plugin for being free. I highly recommend it. We have a Noveltech character here, around a 75% target on mode 2, simple stuff. An EQ, taking off some of the higher frequencies. Like I said before on the bass group, we do this just to give a bit more room for the top leads to go through, because we're going to have quite a few layers of top leads going through as well when we're cutting down the low frequencies. This time we're using the glue compressor, not fab filter. Again, does the same thing, just squeezes the leads together. Sound Godizer on mode A. We have an EQ again, cutting out the 5 kHz range, and then the same kickstart as the piano chords. You can hear right away, as soon as I turn off the chords and the piano, you just miss a ton of frequencies and a ton of power. But I think we're going to leave it there for this episode. In the next episode, we're going to work on the drop lead, get the actual first drop going, and then we can move on from there. So it's been a pretty good episode. We've got quite a bit done. So I hope this part helped you. I hope you learned something. If you did, smash the like button. It helps the channel grow. Subscribe if you're new here. Stay safe, and I'll speak to you all very, very soon. Take care. Have a wonderful day.